And welcome back to College Football Tradition, a history of American college football. My name is Brian Partiga. I'm joined alongside my BFF, my bro host, co-host, Jacob Vanderford. We are here to talk about the 1886 college football season. This one is very similar to our 1884 episode. It did end the 86 season in a 0-0 Princeton and Yale draw. These two teams were at the beacon of the sport throughout the 70s and 80s. They were battling it out at the end of nearly every single season. These were the teams to beat, and they were both undefeated going into this retroactive national championship game. And then it ended in a 0-0 draw. Some of the things that happened during that game was a referee was absent, there was some heavy rain, and there was some eventual darkness, lack of field lights, that prevented the game from ever being finished. Yale at one point was leading 4-0. Touchdowns were worth 4 points at the time. Yale was leading 4-0, but the game had to be declared a no contest due to the dark sky conditions, and that resulted in a 0-0 tie. Jacob.
It is so interesting to me just to see over the course of these past several years how all of these different conditions came into play for how these games, how the outcome of these games happened. Think about 1884, going back to that episode. I know y'all listened to that. Thank you for doing so. But in that episode, we kind of talked about how there was a Harvard referee who was in favor of Yale in that contest against Princeton. And that is kind of how that ended up, and they stopped the contest and all of those things. Also, part of that was due to the lighting of the field. And so it's really interesting how all those conditions come into play. Now, today, I feel like there's a lot more contingencies on the lights have to be great. There's the whole day, the whole week before a game happens, they are double checking and triple checking everything. And so thinking about this time frame, like there weren't lights, like there wasn't TV, media rights, and things like that happening with those contingencies. So very interesting in the 1800s that this happened. Some other things to point out from this year in 1886. So after the game, the IFA, the Intercollegiate Football Association, they decided to hold a special meeting to discuss this game, and they agreed that the Yale Bulldogs should have been declared the winner, which is really interesting too, because you think about today, sometimes referees will make a missed call, and they'll come out with a statement maybe a couple days in advance saying, actually, we should have corrected this call in the moment. It should be this. Maybe there was a pass interference call that deflected a touchdown that should have been called, and that team should have won. So you're seeing that a lot today, but in this instance, this just they called it a tie, and that prevented the Yale Bulldogs from winning. So I think it's so interesting that that happened as well. Again, like under the existing rules of the time, they stated they did not have the authority to award a winner of the game either. I think you definitely did, IFA. You could have called it like you saw it, but
I
that's how it
know.
is.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just a very interesting time college football here in the 1880s. Very eerie how similar 84 and 86 were.
Yeah, for sure. And something of note as well is that this game was played at Princeton. So the game was played in Princeton, New Jersey. The year before, 1885, was that famous Princeton punt return at Yale, Princeton beating Yale in 1885 at Yale in New Haven. So these 2 years, 85 and 86, they played at home sites of the college campuses. But the other years, they were obviously playing at Polo Grounds in New York for a lot of these games, and they would return back there in 1887 for that contest. But 1886 was played at Princeton. So I'm sure that the fans of Princeton, being that your team was losing in this contest, just like in 1884, your team was losing before the game was called. So 1884 and 1886, like you said, very similar and both in favor of Princeton, who was losing in both games before the game was called a no contest. I'm glad that the IFA decided to hold that special meeting after and agreed that Yale should have won, but they couldn't do anything at the time. They basically said, the rules are the rules. The game was called this way, and the game was called a no contest, and it had to end. I also wanted to mention the schools that were in the IFA at the time. It was Harvard, it was Princeton, it was Yale, and it was also Columbia. So a lot of the schools that we see in the Ivy League today, those first four schools made up the IFA. So they were the governing body of the major college football teams at the time.
Yeah, and kind of want to talk about some of the other teams that were playing during this season. We talk a lot about Princeton and Yale and those Ivy League schools that kind of made up that IFA. But when you think about in 1886, there was also Penn. Penn played a 17-game season. They went 9-7-1. Harvard, another very competitive team in the 1800s, completed a 12-2 campaign, and their only losses were to Princeton. Princeton 12 nothing, and then Yale 29-4. So very interesting teams there and the way that they played in
Yeah.
those seasons.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think it was, isn't it crazy? Penn played 17 games in the span of 2 months. Not even the teams that made it to
that
the
is
national
grueling.
championship in a 12-team playoff format play 17 games. I mean, it's
Yeah,
possible that they can, but the two teams this past year did not play 17 games.
yeah, that is a grueling schedule.
That's crazy.
How did they have the endurance to do that in the 1880s? Who knows?
I have no idea. And the fact that they played Princeton a few times, like, geez, like, oh gosh, that would be tough.
Yeah. Princeton and Yale are absolute juggernauts, like buzzsaws.
Literally buzzsaws. Speaking of teams that were, unblemished, not necessarily buzzsaws, but Cincinnati and Michigan both went 2-0.
The
Those two teams,
Bearcats?
yeah, the Bearcats,
Let's
Cincinnati.
go.
Yeah, Cincinnati and Michigan, ironically, both played in the same college football playoff a few years back. That was, what was that, 2021? Cincinnati and Michigan both made the playoff. They were the only two straight up undefeated teams this year, Cincinnati and Michigan. But obviously, their schedules were not strong at all, which is why Princeton and Yale, that game was the retroactive national championship. And with it being declared a no contest, really, both teams claim national championships and are crowned by us as national champions. But what is your opinion if we had to pick one of these two stellar programs for 1886?
I still think I'd say Yale. I know like we've talked about how a lot of these teams, we usually pick them based on either like their strength of schedule or just the sheer dominance in the singular games that they played and the amount of points they put up. And I mean, you look at Yale in 1886, they outscored their opponents 687-4. Like that is insanely impressive. You cannot take that away from them. I think if they would have had more time in this game and more time to score and things like that before the game stopped, I think they would have eventually won. That's just my opinion. But yeah, I got to go with Yale in this one.
I also have to go with Yale. So Yale is our college football tradition pick one champion. We also award Princeton that title since it was declared a no contest. But both Jacob and I agree that our pick one champion is Yale, and that's good because when I look at Yale's 1886 schedule, it's absolutely insane how good this defense was. They won 75-0 against Westland. Then they beat them again 62-0. 96-0 over MIT, 54-0 over Stevens. They beat Williams 76-0. They beat up on Westland 136-0. So they beat up on them twice. Beat up on some athletic club 82-0. Penn 75-0. They beat Harvard 29-4. That was the only time they let up points. So I have a hard time believing that Princeton would have been able to score on Yale in this game. And if they were able to score, that only would have made the score tied. This Yale team was dominant on offense. They were averaging like 85 points a game, and they had a stout defense, only allowing 4 points all year to that Harvard team, and that game was also on the road. So, I mean, I think this Yale team absolutely deserving of our pick one national championship.
For sure. The year of the Bulldog.
The year of the Bulldog again.
Once again, I feel like there's so many years throughout this time frame where it's either the year of the Bulldog or the year of the Tiger. Like there's no year of the Crimson yet. There's no year of the Wolverine. Hopefully we'll see some more of that coming up.
We will see plenty of those coming up. As I write these articles on LinkedIn, so you could check out every season of college football. We are putting out articles on the history of American college football every single season of the sport. I have a hard time coming up with titles for some of these years during the 70s
Yeah.
and 80s. The year of the Tiger, like you said, the year of the Bulldog. Every year I could name something like that. I really could.
Yeah, literally.
Yeah, it's just nuts. But
Yeah, seriously though, like check out the LinkedIn articles. Brian is churning those out. The titles are fire. The content is fire. Yeah, so definitely check those out. Listen to our podcast as you kind of go along. I guarantee you, well, I can't guarantee because I haven't done my research, but there's not a lot of podcasts that are putting out these history of American college football little crash courses. So I hope you enjoy these.
yeah, absolutely. And we keep them short and sweet,
Yeah.
like this one. So we're all done. We're all done with this episode. This is a history of American college football. Contesting the rules is what this one is called. 1886. We will catch you for the next episode as we conclude the 19th century. For Jacob Vanderford, I'm Brian Partika. Have a great one.
Short and sweet.